This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. We are part of the SB Nation family of podcasts on Cincy Jungle's podcast channel, among other shows that are on that channel as well. So check out Matt Minnick's Chalk Talk, Orange is the New Black. Those are a couple of other shows that are on the program slate. We appreciate you subscribing to the channel and getting this show. You can get it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Megaphone, iHeartRadio. You can get all of our stuff via, the video is on YouTube and all of our stuff is available on cincyjungle.com. So let's bring in our first of two special guests this evening. Brent Taylor, who is with Roll Bama Roll, the SB Nation site for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Brent, how you doing?
Hey, Anthony. I'm doing good. How about you guys?
Good. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you can see and or hear us all right. I appreciate you making the time to join us. We're gonna primarily ask you kind of about Tua Tagovailoa. I guess I'll start with this, though. I don't want to say that the Alabama season has derailed, because they are still one of the strongest teams in the nation. But had he not been injured, Tua, do you think that the Bama team would be in the playoff picture, or do you think that, that loss to LSU kind of sealed their fate, and the fact that, the quarterback who came in for him just wasn't going to cut it? But do you think that him being healthy would have changed the current look of what's going on with the Crimson Tide?
There's always those ifs. What if? And you hate it. But this Alabama's decade of basically college football dominance started when Colt McCoy got hurt in a national championship game. And so that's kind of been a running joke, is if only Colt hadn't got hurt. And we've made fun of Texas for years for that. So I guess I kind of have to lay off of that one. But
what ifs and buts, right?
Yeah, ifs and buts. The LSU game, I don't think that would have made a difference. I think Tua was about as healthy as he could have been, and Alabama just lost. The Auburn game, that's a little different. It was a 3-point game, and the backup quarterback threw 2 pick sixes, one of them in the end zone. But on the other hand, it was playing, I guess you guys are from a lot further up north and probably don't see it much, but when Alabama plays in Auburn, things go bad. In some way or another, something always goes bad. So I don't know. I don't hold a whole lot of hope, regardless, that Alabama would have won that one.
So if you were to look at Tua as a Alabama quarterback and potential NFL prospect, he's got a number of different strengths. You could point to a handful: the deep ball, leadership, toughness playing through some of those injuries, a lot of different stuff. What would you say, as someone who has watched him ardently over the past, consistency maybe is another one. What would you say is his biggest strength or biggest positive trait of all the positive traits as he goes towards the NFL? So
this is one I'm actually really certain on. It's one people don't talk about a whole lot with quarterbacks, but it's his pocket movement. And you'll see one of the biggest detractors from a lot of your Facebook commenters and stuff is that it's too easy. He just stands in the pocket forever and then makes easy throws. And then you watch and you're like, oh, that's not because an offensive line is just making it easy for him. He's just got this way of kind of drifting in a pocket, moving around a little bit of Drew Brees in him that way, of making a poorly blocked offensive line look a lot better than they really were.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely see a lot of Brees in the way that he manipulates the pocket. But of course, the one thing, I would love for the main discussion around Tua to be what he's good at. But obviously, a lot of Bengals fans are really concerned about the injury and the current one right now, and the fact that he already had a couple major ones before this. So from someone who's followed his entire career, from someone who's kept the updates with all of his recoveries and whatnot, like, I don't want to say, I don't want to ask you if he's injury prone, but can you give just the general fan the general NFL fan a prognosis of what injuries that Tua has suffered and how he's recovered them, and what, in your best opinion, is his prognosis for his recovery going forward in 2020?
So it started after his freshman year. Everybody was kind of expecting him after the brilliant national championship game when he burst onto a national stage to kind of take over that next spring game, and we could finally see him as a starter. And he broke his index finger, I think, maybe the middle finger, one of those, and had to miss the spring game. So, it's just one of those little fluky things. Well, then halfway through his first season, he had a knee injury. It was kind of, I think, they never really disclosed what it was, but he kind of acted like maybe an MCL sprain, not bad enough to have surgery, but enough to, wear some tight knee sleeves and hobble around a little bit. And then as it went on, he'd kind of get a little better. Then somebody'd hit him. He'd get worse for another week. And then he ended up spraining another ankle, and it was either the other knee or the second ankle in the SEC championship game, and ended up having to be benched because of that. He had a tightrope surgery on that ankle and was ready to go for the championship game that year. And then came into this season and then had another ankle sprain, had another tightrope surgery, was almost looking full speed again, and then had the devastating hip injury. When it first happened, there was a lot of people saying this was similar to the Bo Jackson injury back in the day, and it was going to be a career ender, and he'd struggle to even walk again, and this and that. And then as the week went on, we heard more and more that they kind of expected maybe by a full recovery, maybe by even next season. Alabama's had another linebacker, CJ Mosley, had the same injury in the national championship game in 2011, I think. And he wound up playing the next year after he was kind of slow the first few weeks. So there is precedent for coming back from that injury. And even as a quarterback, it's maybe not as important, even if he doesn't get that full motion that, say, a receiver or cornerback would have. But again, hey, I'm not a doctor, and everyone else on Twitter has speculated this one. So either way, I'm not sure I'd hold out hope that he'd be ready to go at the start of next season. But maybe, part of the way through the year, he'd be mostly ready to go, and maybe even take a redshirt year almost, just to learn how to be an NFL quarterback after he missed the whole offseason.
Talking with Brent Taylor of Roll Bama Roll of the SB Nation Network, the SB Nation's Alabama Crimson Tide community for Alabama there. Talking about Tua, one of the concerns I think that Bengals fans have, and quite honestly, it was one that was mine early in the process until I really started kind of watching a few more Alabama games. But you would definitely know this or know about this more clearly than I would. One of the concerns I think that a lot of people have is Tua the quarterback that raises everybody else's play, or the Alabama super team with the great offensive line, the great receivers that maybe help him out a bit more. What do you think is more fact or fiction there? Is Tua raising the play of others, or is he a little bit of a product of such a great football team because Saban is such a great recruiter and they always get the talent?
Man, chicken or the egg there. But I will say that is a hard one, because the 3 or really 4 receivers Alabama's got right now are all such big play threats. They just got so much speed. But I will say, in the years leading up to this, kind of one of the favorite criticisms of Saban's teams have been kind of a plodding, slow, not all that effective passing offense. We've got the game manager quarterbacks and maybe one receiver that's pretty good. You got a Julio Jones or Amari Cooper bailing you out on third down. And other than that, it's mostly ineffective. And then all of a sudden, you get one new quarterback, and all 4 receivers are making that quarterback good after years and years and years of the offense kind of being held back by a passing game. So that's kind of where I'd point to that. But, it's also a changing of times. Passing's easier than it ever has been. And all those receivers did come in at one time. So it very well could just be some really great receivers making great plays on slant routes.
That's very true. And this is going to be kind of going off of that, this is kind of be more of a tough question because Tua's had a lot of very productive games. Obviously, he's one of the most productive quarterbacks in college football history. And there hasn't been a lot of games where he's kind of looked human in a sense where he hasn't been able to do what he does best. So off the top of your head, if there's one game where you would point to anybody and say, watch this game if you want to evaluate what Tua does well, and if there's one game where you say, watch this game if you want to see where Tua struggles over his career, what are the games that you're pointing at?
The ones where he struggled, well, I would say, first of all, you kind of have to take out the ones where he went out with injury. The Georgia SEC championship was by far his worst, but he was also playing on a sprained ankle and knee in the same game. So probably his worst moments were in the championship loss to Clemson last year. Highly televised, everyone saw it, but you could kind of see where he knows that there's a little bit of that Brett Favre mentality of, I'm going to win this game, and we're throwing it deep. And so a good defensive coordinator like Brett Venables pulled some stunts on him and disguised some coverages. And so like one of his deep interceptions, he threw it as soon as his receiver beat the corner. Turned out it was a disguised cover 2, and there was safety help just waiting there for it. So that's kind of a big one to watch for. The other thing, at the end of the second half of the LSU game this year, he pulled it again, 20 seconds left in the half, decided to throw a risky one over the middle and just hit a linebacker straight in the chest. Wound up, LSU drove it back and scored with 20, and there was only 20 seconds left. And that's actually one throw that he's had intercepted multiple times over the past 3 years. It's always that looking at a guy coming across a drag route and missing a linebacker coming the other way and cutting it off. So that's been kind of his biggest, I guess, a bugaboo is a certain throw, is that deep crosser and a linebacker coming from the opposite direction. And for the best game to watch, honestly, I would go back to his very first one, that championship win over Georgia. That was some great throws. The game winner in overtime, he looks one way, then throws it deep the other. He's done that for 3 years since then, and you think eventually this isn't going to work, and it just keeps working.
Brent, what are you thinking the level of success Tua can have behind an offensive line that maybe is not up to snuff, or not one of the better ones in the NFL? You look at his injuries, that's a concern. But you also mentioned that one of his strengths is his pocket awareness and his ability to navigate in the pocket. So do you think that he could still be successful on a team? Because right now the Bengals offensive line is one of, if not the worst in the league. They'll get Jonah Williams back next year, but the concern is there amongst the fan base and those who cover the team that you bring in a quarterback, you spend this high pick, and he's going to get killed behind this offensive line. But there are some guys who find the way to make plays despite some of the shortcomings in front of them. Do you think that Tua can be a very effective NFL quarterback behind a patchwork offensive line, or worse than patchwork?
That's always going to be really hard for a quarterback behind an offensive line that rough. As a quick aside, NFL-wise, I'm actually a Seattle fan. So from Alabama, we don't have a pro team. I picked Seattle years and years ago because they drafted Sean Alexander. But anyway, so for years, I've been watching Russell Wilson run for his life most every play of the game behind a horrible offensive line. So it can be done. Tua is definitely not as fast or as good of a scrambler as like a Russell Wilson is, but he is better at not running the wrong way or running into people. So I think he can be. I think I don't know the Bengals' offensive scheme, but I think if you're struggling with pass protection, there's got to be a lot of quick passes. And under this year's offense, so 2018, Alabama had a very vertical offense. There was a lot of play action, deep shots. This year, under Steve Sarkisian, it's been more of a standard West Coast, a lot of quick hitting stuff. I think that's important, and he's got a quick release and the ability to do that.
Talking with Brent Taylor from Roll Bama Roll, the Alabama SB Nation site. Brent, I want to kind of transition to other players on Alabama's roster because Alabama's still a really good team and always produces quality NFL talents. Sticking with the offensive line, Alabama has 2 tackle prospects that are draft eligible and could declare for the NFL draft. One of them, I think Dane Brugler Jr. for the Athletic listed him as his top tackle prospect in the NFL draft this year. Jedrick Wills Jr., and the other guy being Alex Leatherwood. In your opinion, which of these guys really stands out more to you as the better professional going forward? Obviously, you can classify which of them you think has been better in Alabama, but in terms of translatable skills into the NFL, like athleticism and how they handle power, which one are you more confident in having the better NFL career?
Jedrick Wills, absolutely. Not even a second hesitation there. He's been, even as a high school recruit, kind of one of the top testers in a lot of your athletic power, speed, acceleration, all those. And then kind of came in his freshman year. He didn't start, but he quickly kind of pushed his way into rotation, played a good bit. And then sophomore year was a starter. And the fun thing about Wills is anytime you stop watching the ball and you move to the offensive line, and you look for 74, there's probably going to be 1 to 2 people on the ground somewhere around him. Like wherever he is, there's chaos. And for an offensive line, it's just fun to watch. And, he takes off into space on screen passes or blocking downfield. And he's almost more fun to watch than the running back. And as a pass protector, he's got good feet. He's had some issues with kind of catching stunts with smaller linemen. Getting inside of them has kind of been his biggest issue. For Alex Leatherwood, he came in as this really highly rated 5-star tackle, but he was kind of big and struggled with footwork early on. So he played guard his first year before moving to tackle this year. He's a little more of a prototypical tackle. He's got very strong arms, like your lengthy, strong arms that a lot of people want to see in a tackle. There's been a couple times we've seen highlights of him blocking one guy with each arm. But he's also been a good bit less consistent than some of the other guys have been. So he's got a lot of size and potential. I wouldn't be surprised if Leatherwood actually comes back for a senior year, though.
Where do you see Jonah Williams falling in between all those guys, and talent-wise and NFL ceiling? We didn't get to see Jonah Williams this year really at all because he didn't play in training camp, he didn't practice, he didn't play in the preseason. So where do you see Jonah Williams being an Alabama guy, and how excited should Bengals fans be about his coming back to the team in 2020?
And Jonah Williams was just great. So he started for 3 years. And one of the best things about Williams was that you absolutely never noticed him. You could go an entire season and think, did he even play? And for an offensive lineman, that's what you want. So I know leading up to the draft, the whole thing was about his arm length. And everybody said, well, he should be a guard. I don't know. I've never seen him play guard. But I know he was a really good tackle on both the right and left sides. And pass protection, you never had to worry about him. And he was a lot of fun to watch, kind of getting into the open field, blocking downfield. It kind of the biggest weakness we saw from it at Alabama was kind of in those short yardage, just lining up directly on some short nose tackle that's moved outside on a goal line or whatever. He could kind of get knocked back a little bit. He was just too tall and lean for those. But as a pass protector, he was as good as you could have ever asked for. And again, a lot of fun watching him kind of pull outside of the line.
Well, that's something to look forward to most definitely for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they need a lot of help on the offensive line. They desperately missed him this year. Brent, we're going to get you out of here. Before we do, we're going to put you in the hot seat, a little bit of a prediction machine here. Where do you see Tua going, and or where do you see the best fits in terms of maybe some of those teams that are sitting towards the top 10, top half of the draft? As I know we're a few months away from it, but what do you think on that? Where do you think he lands, and what do you think is the best fit?
Honestly, before, if Ryan Tannehill had not broken out, I was thinking he'd fit really well with the Titans. And kind of the offense they've been wanting to try to run with Marcus Mariota and never have been able to. But Tannehill's been playing so well lately, I think maybe they'll look a different direction. And I don't know the Titans' record right now anyway.
I think they're 8-5.
8-5. So they'd probably be picking around 20 or so. But so I'll come off of that one. The Dolphins tank for Tua, I don't think is going to be a thing anymore. Everybody's looking for Joe Burrow now. So how about the Oakland Raiders? We'll throw it out there. They're kind of getting tired of Derek Carr over there, and are going to be looking for some compliments to a decent run game. So yeah, I'll go with the Oakland Raiders.
Okay,
so back with Josh Jacobs. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. You think he may fall a little bit then? You're thinking he may be, because right now the Raiders are, what are they, 6-7 or something?
Yeah, they're somewhere around 50%.
Yeah.
I think he could. It's one of those things with an injury like that. Who was it a couple years ago that the linebacker out of Notre Dame, I think?
Oh yeah.
Was it
Jalen Smith?
Jalen Smith.
Yeah, Jalen Smith. He fell from a surefire top 5 pick to somewhere like, well, maybe he'll be a 4th or 5th rounder now. And it really all just depended on if a team decided to go for it. Which, I mean, that's how it is with any pick, but with high-profile injuries like this, there's such a big range. If a top 5 team says, I think he'll be better, then they might go for it.
Yeah.
But if everybody thinks, I don't think so, we'll wait and see, and then who knows, he might drop to the Patriots.
Oh gosh. Oh goodness. What a week to bring that up. Wow. Tommy Wagner in our Facebook chat says Tua would go to the Colts. I think that would be kind of interesting and possibly a good fit there too. But we'll see how it all plays out. Brent, thanks for joining us. I know we said 15 minutes. I think we kept you much longer than that, but we enjoyed chatting with you and getting the insight on Tua Tagovailoa and other Alabama prospects, both coming out this year and the one the Bengals grabbed last year. Where can people follow you, find your stuff, all that good stuff?
So our website is Roll Bama Roll. The Twitter handle is @RollBamaRoll. And then if you follow that, you'll end up seeing me eventually. I'm Brent Taylor. My Twitter is @BTBama22. That's really it. But yeah, Roll Bama Roll. You'll see me writing there a good bit.
Awesome. Well, thanks. You guys do good work there. Thanks for coming on the program. If the Bengals end up taking Tua or other Alabama prospects in this coming draft, we'd love to have you back on and chat with you about it if you're willing and able.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do these podcasts. And a lot of times after Alabama players get picked, I'll do kind of guest writing pieces for the different SB Nation sites around. It's one of my favorite times of the year.
Awesome. Well,
Absolutely.
we'd love to tap you for some of that info. Appreciate you coming on, Brent.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, take it easy. That was Brent Taylor from Roll Bama Roll, the SB Nation Alabama site there. Good stuff. Good insight on Tua there, I thought, John, especially some of what he thought was the some of his strength, his biggest area of strength. I thought that was a really interesting piece and something that could be very valuable to the Bengals.
And he could have said so many different things. Like
Yeah.
he settled on pocket and footwork, and that's definitely the thing that sticks out. But like, man, he's just the most balanced of these quarterback prospects in terms of strengths, because he has great velocity in an arm, he has a quick release, and he has the pocket management and skills, and he has the production. It's just it really is a shame that he's the one that has this injury issue.
Yeah, it would. I mean, I think a lot of Bengals fans would still be on the Burrow bandwagon, especially if the LSU game,
Of course.
if that played out, continued to play it the same way, and if he remained healthy, though, the rest of the season, it would definitely make for a very interesting debate going forward, especially if he was able to get Bama into the playoffs. Maybe those two teams meet again in the play. It's just like, what if? It's kind of a bummer, but he seems like a really great kid. So hopefully he can overcome that and have a great NFL career. The Bengals take on the Patriots here, but they've got their eyes towards the future. And speaking of the future, we bring in our second special guest of the night, Joseph Yoon. Joseph, how are you, sir? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. How's it going tonight?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Thanks for joining us. I know you had a lot going on, but we appreciate you joining us, talking a little Ducks football. We're going to primarily focus on Justin Herbert because the Cincinnati Bengals are most likely going to be in the market for a quarterback, particularly at the top of the first round. And Justin Herbert is one of those big three, quote unquote, that they might be looking at. So we'll kind of ask you, start off a little bit with a little bit of a profile of Herbert. What would you say is his biggest strength? Because he's got the arm strength, he's got the size, he's got some athleticism, mobility, that sort of thing. What would you say as an NFL prospect of the many strengths that Justin Herbert has is his biggest strength as a potential pro?
Like you said earlier, his arm talent is his biggest strength as of right now, and his adaptability to different offensive schemes, because he went through 3 offensive coordinators so far in his career, so completely different schemes. And because his first coach was I think it was Willie Taggart, and he runs a Baylor style offense, where the receivers almost line up in the stands pretty much, and right now he's under Marcus Arroyo, under Mario Cristobal, who prefers a pro style system. So I think his adaptability is his biggest strength.
That's very interesting. Just over the course of Herbert's career, his production is, in terms of touchdown interception ratio, has been stable. His completion percentage and overall accuracy has been something a little bit more volatile. He was at 67% back in 2017, dropped back down to 59% last year, but now it's up to 66.7% this year. And a lot of that can be attributed to a lot more or shorter average depth of target, and how that Oregon offense hasn't asked him to really push the ball down the field. But also, do you see an improvement in terms of overall accuracy, and the fact that there's been a lot of drops from Oregon receivers kind of hurting him in terms of overall completion percentage? Have you seen necessary growth from him as a prospect in terms of accuracy that can be attributed to that increase in completion percentage?
Well, last year, Oregon led the country in drops from his receivers, and he had a favorite target last year, Dylan Mitchell, who was an undrafted free agent from the Vikings. And so obviously he didn't have Mitchell this year, so he had to spread the targets around. And yeah, so it's I believe his accuracy is more towards like 63% than the 59 that we saw last year.
Yeah, his completion percentage actually is the second highest that he's had in his career, 66.7. He had 67.5, but he only started 8 games there. I think, Joseph, the big question here is, why the inconsistency? Is it John, my co-host, mentioned the drops? You kind of talked to that a little bit. Justin Herbert seems to have, of all of the quarterbacks in this draft, I think raw talent-wise, he's probably got it all. You mentioned the arm strength, all of that. Why some of the inconsistency? Why some of the disappearing acts in bigger games or games they had to have? I think that's probably the biggest concern and why he might be, a little bit further down the pecking order for some teams as they look to draft a quarterback.
Fundamentally speaking, as a passer, he's not fully developed yet because he's been hurt a bunch earlier on in his career. He had a collarbone injury his sophomore season, I believe, and then his lower half needs a lot of work because he likes to throw off his back foot a lot like Jay Cutler does in the past, unfortunately, and He doesn't throw any anticipation throws. He doesn't throw any receivers open. He just throws it to a spot, and hopefully the receiver's there. He's that kind of passer. So basically, he needs a babysitter like Jared Goff does with Sean McVay. So yeah, basically, the scheme requires him to have a receiver open at all times. So he has zero anticipation, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
So obviously, like you said, he's not fully developed, and he is more of a raw prospect, even though he has 4 years of starting experience. But that raw arm strength can get him out of some situations, and it's definitely fun to watch. In terms of dealing with pressure and creating out of structure, would you say it's more of a strength or weakness for him? Because playing in Cincinnati, you're going to deal with some pressure in your face from time to time because their offensive line is still struggling, and sometimes guys aren't going to be open initially, and you may have to find different passing lanes out of the pocket. Would you say that right now that you're comfortable? Like, has he improved in that area where when he escapes the pocket, it's more of a, well, let's see what he's going to do instead of oh my God, he's going out of structure?
He's definitely growing in that regard, but his pocket awareness is almost Blaine Gabbert-esque. So yeah, he has a tendency to lower his eyes and just scramble, but he takes a lot of sacks, unfortunately. And the Oregon offensive line, as you might know, is one of the best in the country. Yeah. So it's most of the sacks were on Herbert, but there were some sacks on the offensive line, but mostly it's just he doesn't have the pocket awareness that a senior should have. It's more like true freshman level, but it's the offensive line didn't develop until basically his junior and senior year, where they got thrown into the fire early, so they had to develop really quickly. And as you know, undeveloped linemen are, not good. So, yeah, he tends to try to fade away from the pressure, and he has arm talent to get the throws there. It's just sometimes it's just hit or miss. It's like a mixed bag of what you get.
Talking with Joseph Yun of Addicted to Quack, the SB Nation Oregon website. Appreciate his time talking some Justin Herbert with us. I want to – we've been talking quite a bit about Justin Herbert. We'll kind of circle back around to that as we conclude. But saw a comment in our live chat about Troy Dye, who actually is a brother of former Bengal Tony Dye. Talk about him a little bit. Is he worth a look for the Bengals as a linebacker, kind of hybrid player? And if so, maybe, what's his value?
I would put his value around, maybe the highest would be the 3rd round. Maybe the lowest I would take him is the 5th round, because he's kind of a tweener frame wise, so you don't know where to place him actually. So he's kind of like a Deion Buchanan for the Cardinals way back in the day. Well, not way back, but a couple of years ago. But he, from the scouting reports, he's that I've written in the past, that he has good tackle numbers, but he's not very physical at the point of attack. So that may be due to frame, that may be due to defensive scheme, but he's not what you would call a Luke Kuechly or anything. He's just he may be a 2-down linebacker at the next level.
Well, there's still definitely value in that, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. He's, I think, projected right now in about the day 2 range, but that's still definitely a player that the Bengals could definitely value there. Going back to Herbert, we had a fan commenting, Brian Creamer. He wants to ask, did Herm Edwards and Marvin Lewis, both coaches for Arizona State, did he do a good job of exposing Herbert's weaknesses in that game? Because that game ultimately put Oregon out of the college football playoff race and kind of rattled him for a little bit. And that was a great game from Arizona State. So was there anything that you saw from their defensive game plan that really got Herbert off the wrong way?
Not really. I think they just copied the Auburn game plan, where they just forced a lot of pressure on him and made him really see ghosts out there, so to speak. And he doesn't deal well with pressure, I'll say.
Talking with Joseph Yun here, kind of to close up here, what is your confidence level in Justin Herbert? I mean, I've kind of held the position as, you know, he is a boomer bust prospect. He could become the best quarterback of this class, given his physical tools, or some of these things you're talking about could be, you know, he could wreck a franchise. He could be a Blaine Gabbert, where you use a top 5, top 10 pick on the guy and you rely on him to be the next franchise quarterback, and it just never materializes. Where we've heard you compare him a little bit to Jay Cutler. We've heard the Blaine Gabbert comparison. Where do you see his, you know, trajectory going in the NFL? Do you have confidence that he's going to work through some of these things, or are these things that are always going to be part and parcel of his style of play, and he's going to just, you know, he's never going to really put it together as a true prospect?
He definitely has the tools to be like a franchise passer, and if he goes to the Bengals, I think he's going to the right staff. But not this year anyway. But sorry to throw shade. I think Zach Taylor would get him on the right path fundamentally. But overall, I think he could be, best case scenario overall, he could be a more athletic Ryan Tannehill. Worst case, he could be out of the league in 4 years.
Yeah, maybe a Jake Locker, someone like that. Well, thanks, Joseph. I appreciate the time. Where can people follow you, follow your stuff, and get in touch with you?
Addicted to Quack, I write for, and I also run Addicted to Quack, the Twitter account. So my personal account is at @TuckingKnowles247.
Cool. Well, appreciate you coming on. If the Bengals select some Ducks players, we'd love to have you back on, chat about them if you're willing and able.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time, man. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
That was Joseph Yun of Addicted to Quack. Not exactly the glowing endorsement of Justin Herbert there, but hey, he's a guy who's watched a lot of Justin Herbert, and those issues are, I mean, that's what we've seen. That's what a lot of people have seen, and that's what people are worried about. Do you feel you can coach your way through those and get him past some of these issues we've seen, the eyes down, some of the anticipation issues, and you're able to marry that with the physical tools, or are the weaknesses just always going to outweigh the strengths?
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, this is, I mean, everything that he said is logical and what we've seen from him. And I think part of it was, he had that great game against Arizona, and that kind of raised his hype a little bit and raised his stock. But then he and Oregon as a whole team kind of faded out of the conversation as the year went on, and he didn't play really his best football towards the end of the year. So, right now the opinion on him is more down than anything. But like you said, like the tools are there, and if someone can develop them, they can potentially have a great quarterback. But it'll take that quick development for him to fix some of those nagging weaknesses and turn them into strengths. And if he can't do that early on in his career, it's going to be really hard for him to turn around and stick into the league. So like, it really does depend on where he goes and how much time he's given. But honestly, like a prognosis of at best a Ryan Tannehill is not the most promising you want to hear.
Right. I think aside from the tools, the major other strength that Joseph touched on that I thought that I think the teams will like is the fact that he seems to be like a scheme diverse guy. He can work in multiple schemes. He can do multiple things. He's got the athleticism to work in different schemes. I wasn't actually aware he's had 3 offensive coordinators the past 3 years. So that's always a difficult thing for a quarterback to work through. Obviously head coaching changes as well mixed in there. So, I don't want to go too much into making excuses for the guy, but there are things to work through. And I think if you listened a little while back, there was a video from Greg Cosell, a very well-respected NFL films and quarterback film guy. He kind of said, Justin Herbert's a guy that is very, diverse. He can work in a lot of different schemes, and that's why teams will like him along with the raw tools that he has. So, I thought that was kind of an interesting standpoint as well.
You can do anything with that arm talent. He can put the ball anywhere on the field, and he's got the athleticism for being 6'6", 230 to roll out of the pocket and make throws on the run. It's all about just getting the technical aspects down, and it's discouraging for a 4-year player to still struggle with these issues. But I guess it was. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because he was projected to be potentially a first-round pick last year had he declared, but these issues still would have existed and would have plagued his rookie year probably if he would have played. So I don't know if returning to his senior year was the best decision for him because now we have more tape and raised a lot more questions about him, but he definitely needed the extra year development before he was thrown into the wolves of the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how his stock kind of volatates during this process.
Yeah, and I think, who knows? Good combine, good pro day, throwing the ball well, that could have people drooling. Who knows? And especially if, who knows what happens with the prognosis of Tua's recovery, right? If it gets, we heard from Brent earlier saying, he could see this being a redshirt year. Well, if you're a team picking in the top 10, you're not really interested in that. If you need a quarterback, you need a guy to come in now and play right away for the most part. So, that could maneuver things around as well. But our thanks to both of those guys, Joseph Yun of Addicted to Quack joining us here a little late, and Brent Taylor of Bama Roll. We had a question here. Josh Wooded asked Anthony, when did you say the LSU guy is coming on? That'll be next week. So he will be joining us next week to talk about Joe Burrow. That's obviously it's Billy Gomilla is set to join us next week. He is with the he is with the LSU SB Nation site, and he's going to talk about Joe Burrow with us. So we look forward to that. Obviously, we teased you with these two, and everybody wants to hear about Joe Burrow. So we'll talk about that. Our thanks for all of you for hanging with us, tuning in. We may break this episode up in terms of digestible show for the audio listeners after the fact. We'll see how that works out. But at any rate, thanks for tuning in. John, thanks for sticking around late, man. I know it's late on your end. We will be doing, or at least I will be doing, hopefully John can join me, listener questions this Friday afternoon. So join us for that on Cincy Jungle's Facebook and the Orange and Black Insider YouTube channel. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. He's John Sheeran. I'm Anthony Cosenza. We're going to get to our special guest in just a second here. If you are new to this show, please join us live via YouTube on the Orange and Black Insider YouTube channel or the Cincy Jungle Facebook live video feed. All of our stuff is on Cincy Jungle. You can also get the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Megaphone, iHeartRadio. Get it where you can. You can also get all of our stuff on YouTube and, as I mentioned, cincyjungle.com. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we have been doing some 2020 prospect previews, prospect watch. Last week we did. We had a couple of guests on to help us preview Tua Tagovailoa as well as Justin Herbert, and now we've got Billy Gomilla from and the Valley Shook, which is SB Nation's LSU blog. Billy, how are you? Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear fine? Everything's good. Doing great.
Yeah, well, thanks for making the time. I know you got a lot going on. It's the holidays and whatnot. I wouldn't have probably pushed you to come on this week if it weren't for the fact that Joe Burrow just won the Heisman Trophy and did so in record-setting votes. So we appreciate the time. I'm just going to start off kind of easy, I guess, easy-ish question, which is one that we have asked the other special guests when they've helped us preview other exciting prospects. There are many, many exciting traits about Joe Burrow: pocket presence, leadership, accuracy, all of that. What would you say is his greatest asset as he looks to move into the NFL?
You know, the biggest thing for him this year, and it was the thing that I already felt that he had, he's a great decision maker, and he's always kind of just been really in command of LSU from kind of the first time he stepped in. You know, first game, coming in as a transfer, Miami kind of starts a pregame scuffle, and Burrow was right up in the middle of it. You know, and then immediately talking trash to them about how, about to kick their butt. And even when he was kind of struggling that first year, he had this knack for playing a game that would make you come away, not necessarily knowing the stats, having watched it live and think, oh, he played pretty well. And then you look at the stats, and he was right around 50% completions, or sometimes even under it. But you still felt like he played well because he would kind of just run the offense and keep things going. You know, he took a long time to throw his first interception. He would throw balls away when they needed to be thrown away. He would take sacks in a situation where it was like, well, taking the sack is better than putting the ball up for grabs. Things like that. And this summer, I think when I previewed the team, I said, well, here's the thing. We know he's got the intangibles. We know he's a tough kid. We know he's a leader, all that kind of stuff. It's what kind of, where's his ceiling in the tangible department as a passer? And then he really just took off. I was pretty confident that he would play well this year, that they would do well. I certainly never saw him coming out completing, 76, 77% of his passes and throwing for, damn near 50 touchdowns. I never saw that in my wildest dreams. And it's one thing he's going to have, I think, that's going to serve him best in the NFL is that he's got, I think, a professional mindset. And he's a great decision maker, and he is always just kind of in command and in control of himself.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really expected that monumental jump in production from, sub 60% completion percentage to the NCAA record in completion percentage. And I think obviously the number one thing people attribute that to is the hiring of Joe Brady to really, turn over that entire offensive scheme. And just from someone who hasn't fully watched LSU season and who hasn't been following them from week one, what has been the biggest difference in terms of what Brady has done to that offense? And not necessarily do you believe that all of Burrow's success has been attributed to Brady, but what's really been like the biggest thing that has helped him, transform that offense? What's been the biggest differences between last year and this year's, construction of the offense?
Well, the biggest thing is they just completely committed to the idea of, okay, we're going to be an up-tempo, no-huddle spread team. LSU spends almost the entire game in the shotgun. They've been able to be a high-tempo team. They don't sub very much. They kind of just lean on what they've got, and they go, go, go. And we saw that in the spring game, and it was like, well, that looks different, all right. Whereas last year, they used more spread sets, more three receiver sets, but they still went under center. They still used a little I formation. They still used a lot of two tight end looks. It was still kind of in between what LSU had done before and what I think Ed Orgeron wanted them to be. And then I think Brady helped kind of bring them those next couple steps. And he and Steve Ensminger, who was already here, just had a great relationship and worked really well together. And it all just kind of came together. It was the right situation with the receivers kind of ascending. You had the right kind of just the moon's all kind of lines. You even had a running back who was kind of more of a fit for that kind of offense, more of a scat back, a guy who you get in space and throw the ball to.
Talking with Billy Gomila, head honcho over at And the Valley Shook, the SB Nation LSU blog, helping us preview Joe Burrow as we continue our 2020 prospect watch. Billy, this is where I think there are a couple of points of contention for how great Burrow has looked, for how great the stats are, the record-breaking Heisman votes, all of that. There are a couple of points of contention in terms of his NFL trajectory. I think one of them has to be how close he is. He a player that is just hitting his stride, or is he a player, and what we've seen, who is very close to what his NFL ceiling is or can be? Like, is he still a developing player because of this 1 year wonder type of thing, or 1+ year wonder type of thing, or is he maxing out as he's entering the league? He is a little bit older than, a Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson who came in before him.
I would say physically, sure. I mean, yeah, he's never going to be the guy who is just going to overwhelm you with physical traits. And his physical traits are better than I think people probably realize. He's certainly a better athlete than people realize. He's probably a better runner than even what LSU's used him for. They really haven't had to use him very much as a runner this year. But it's not a case where he's just slap on another 10, 15 pounds of muscle, Physically, he's definitely, I think, on the high end. And physically, it would have been my question coming into this year as far as his NFL bona fides. Does he really have the kind of arm to make the big time throws that you need to make in the NFL? But I'll say this, for this year, he's been able to do that. He's been able to throw, those touch passes over the middle, over the linebackers, but in front of the safeties. He's really been able to just drill slants into some tight coverage. Last year we saw he could do, and I hate to use the Drew Brees comparison, just because it's Drew freaking Brees, but the thing that he could do that Drew Brees has done better than any quarterback I've ever seen is throw that back shoulder throw down the sideline when the defensive back's a little bit on the over the top of the receiver. You throw it just kind of behind him, and the receiver can just turn and get to the ball. And Drew Brees has made a living being able to do that down the sidelines and then being able to do that down the seams. And right away we can see, okay, well, that's a throw that Joe can make pretty regularly. And this year, they took that, but then he goes on to it so much. He's been a great deep ball thrower. He's been able to, just lay it out there and let guys run underneath it. He's been able to make big crossing routes a staple of this offense. He's been able to really just drill those slants in. And, this hasn't been an offense that's lived on just dinking and dunking and throwing short. They've thrown short, they've thrown long, they've thrown intermediate. They've kind of done a little bit of everything. And when you chart Burrow's throws, he really makes each one fairly regularly. I don't know that there's a throw this year that's been a weakness for him.
So the Washington professional football team did something really smart in this past draft, and they paired Dwayne Haskins, their quarterback, with Terry McLaurin, the receiver, both from Ohio State. And obviously, Haskins hasn't had a lot of success, but when he's had the most success, when he's thrown to McLaurin, who's been one of the best rookie receivers in the NFL. The LSU's got a couple of good receivers who are also draft eligible, Jamar Chase and Jefferson, I think. So in terms of keeping Burrow with one of his receivers, who's out of those two guys is the guy that you want to see follow Burrow to the same team? Who do you think he can have the most success with in the professional game?
Well, only one of them's actually draft eligible right now. Chase is a sophomore, so he'll have another year. But Justin Jefferson will be draft eligible, and I imagine will go out. It's funny. Earlier in the year, and certainly in that first year, Justin Jefferson, who is, of course, was the brother of Jordan Jefferson and Ricky Jefferson, who played at LSU, and really wasn't a very heralded recruit. We saw really quickly, all he does is just get open and catch the ball. He's not real flashy. You never saw him make a lot of just crazy plays after the catch, and he's not super physically imposing. He's not small by any stretch, but he's only about 6'2", buck 95, maybe 200 pounds. This year, especially early on, you saw really quickly, like, man, he and Joe are just dialed in together. Joe can just toss it up to him whenever he needs to play. Jefferson's making play after play after play. He makes the big 3rd and 17 catch against Texas and then breaks a tackle and just takes it to the house. He's beating guys deep. He's beating guys short. He's beating guys every which way. And then from somewhere about maybe the 4th or 5th game, Jamar Chase really took over. And he always, he was a huge recruit. LSU fought off a lot of teams to get him. And the difference is he kind of just has a more well-rounded game. He's not huge, but he's about 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. He will not be denied on a jump ball. He makes plays after the catch with quickness. He'll bully guys. He's a really smooth route runner. And then he's shown more speed than I thought he had coming into this year. Just consistently making plays. Against Vanderbilt, he had 2 long touchdowns on, just little quick slant plays over the middle. Against Florida, he beats his guy deep on a straight go route and for the game-icing touchdown. And Bama, he just abused Trevon Diggs, who people say is supposed to be a first-round draft pick. I'm a little skeptical of that after watching him against LSU. But, Chase had him all day, whichever way he wanted. He was able to, wall him off for balls with his body. He was able to go up over him when he had to. And when he had separation, he made a play after the catch. And he won the Bolitnikoff Award, and he deserved it this year, and I imagine he'll be a very high draft pick in the 2021 draft.
Talking with Billy Gomila of And the Valley Shook, SB Nation's LSU blog. We'll be talking with him for just another minute here. We're getting, some questions in our live chats from listeners. I guess we'll kind of try to blend a couple of them here. Basically, I don't know how familiar you are with the offense that Zach Taylor's attempting to run and or the Rams-ish offense. But basically, an overarching theme that we're getting from some of our live listeners is what can Joe Burrow bring in that style of offense, and namely to the Cincinnati Bengals, given his skill set? I mean, you mentioned, maybe some limitations on the arm strength, but great decision-making skills, all of that. And you said he makes all the throws. I mean, how do you see that potential marriage playing out in terms of Burrow's skill set and what the Bengals want to do on offense?
Well, I can't speak a lot to what the Bengals do this year, but I did get to see the Rams in person twice last year against the Saints. And, the thing that impressed me about them with Sean McVay and Jared Goff is McVay found a way to fit what he wanted to do to what Jared Goff did well. And I think he figured out, and I think
do we lose him?
He's not used to reading NFL type defenses. So how do I make that easy for him? We're going to run a lot of play action. We're going to do a lot of shifts. We're going to do a lot of different stuff that's going to make the defense declare itself and give him easy decisions, and that's going to work for him. Yeah, I don't know if it's a long-term plan, but it worked for him, for the last 2 years. I think if you put a guy like Burrow in an offense like that, he's absolutely going to shred because he can make the decisions. The easier you make it for him, I think we've seen this year, the more he can maximize what everybody around him can do.
So I think the main concern that Bengals fans have with not only investing in quarterback with the first overall pick is the whole perception about the Bengals and it itself and the state of their franchise right now. And say they draft a quarterback first overall, what's his reaction going to be coming into a franchise that is not very successful? It's very much in a purgatory. It's very much in a bad shape. And the main concern would be if the quarterback comes in here and maybe doesn't really buy into what they're selling, doesn't buy into the whole process of starting anew and bringing a different culture to Cincinnati. Can you kind of speak upon just the Joe Burrow that you've come to know and the type of personality that he is and his willingness to overcome adversity and the type of, the character that he is to be willing to come into a bad situation and do the best that he can to kind of turn it around.
Well, I don't blame your Bengals fans for feeling that way, just based on what I know of the franchise from the last few years. Joe Burrow kind of came to LSU. He was never really promised the job, even though that's what he was looking for in terms of, he liked Ohio State. He wanted to go somewhere where he could play. And LSU was kind of in a situation where they weren't quite ready to turn the ball over to their next quarterback yet. They had, they were going to be stuck with some younger guys. The idea of having someone that had a little more experience, was a little more developed, was more what they wanted to do. And I think they wanted to open things up a little bit, but they weren't. I don't want to say they didn't know how to. I don't think they were fully vested in what they needed to do yet, and fully confident in their ability to do it yet. And Joe came in here coming from a spread offense. He talked about how he had to kind of reteach himself how to take a snap from center, and he wasn't used to having to drop back and turn his back on the defense on a play action thing, things like that. And you never heard him complain. You never heard him really say anything negative. He kind of just embraced it. He embraced this team really quickly. I only recently found out that very quickly there were some veterans on that 2018 team who kind of were like, who's this kid who's coming in here and thinks he's going to jump the line and take a starting job? And they had to be a little bit of a team meeting, and Joe kind of had to stand up and say, look, I'm here to win football games, and if you guys have a problem with it, let's get this out. And eventually he just won them over just by being himself. So I think he's a guy who is definitely going to bring a pro mindset to the NFL, which I've been lucky enough to interview a lot of football players over the years, and a lot of guys that have gone on to very successful pro careers. And the one thing that I take away from it is the guys who are the most successful for the longest time, the ones who can very much treat it like the way any of us treat any other job, is that you go into work, you do your work, you devote yourself to being the best player you could be. And I think we've seen that Joe Burrow will do that.
Talking with Billy Gomila of SB Nations and the Valley Shook, their LSU website. He's the head guy over there. Billy, before we get you out of here, I know my co-host hates doing these, but do you have a pro comparison? We've heard Carson Wentz. Todd McShay recently said he heard some NFL scouts call him Andy Dalton, which was a very interesting analogy. Some people say a taller Drew Brees. I don't know. What do you have a pro comparison or someone that he reminds you of in terms of his play?
I definitely would see Carson Wentz didn't make a lot of sense to me, because to me Carson Wentz was a guy who more physically jumped off the page a bit, because he was a big, strong guy, playing at that smaller level at North Dakota. Drew Brees kind of works in that he's a better athlete than you probably think he is. Obviously, he's a little taller. Matt Ryan's not a bad comparison. Obviously, Matt Ryan's not much of a runner, but if you've ever seen the Falcons in person a lot, he is a guy that can get out the pocket by time, and that's kind of how I would describe Burrow's mobility a little more. Let me think. Maybe somebody like Jared Goff in terms of, a little bit of mobility, tall guy. He doesn't have that kind of an arm quite like Goff, but Drew Brees is probably the closest comparison I can think of in terms of being accurate, not necessarily being the guy who can power the ball into any window, but somehow still makes every throw that you could ask him to. Whether he's got Drew Brees' overall ability to just be a machine for almost 20 years now, I don't know about that, but as a purely physical prospect, that's not a bad comparison. And Drew Brees wasn't a first-round pick.
No, he wasn't
coming out of college either.
He wasn't. Yeah, I've got one, but I'm reluctant to say it, so I'll hold it to myself. But at that being said, Billy, how can people follow you? Where can they find your stuff? get in touch with you, obviously learn more about Joe Burrow, especially with the college football playoff coming up?
Oh, sure. We're at www.andthevalleyship.com. Today was the first day of the early signing period for recruiting, so we're pretty packed in on that. But we're going to have lots of coverage of the playoffs coming up. And, one of my writers, Seth Galina, is one of the better quarterback breakdown guys on Twitter. If you're a big NFL X and O guy, he's all over Twitter for that. He does a lot of our breakdowns in terms of that kind of stuff. And you can follow me on Twitter at ATVS_Chef Billy.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. I know you had a lot going on, both wrangling the family and doing some other things. I'm sorry I pestered you so much, but greatly, greatly appreciate you coming on and making some time for us.
Happy to do it.
All right. Well, enjoy the college football playoff. Go Tigers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And have a good Christmas, man.
Thanks. Y'all have a Merry Christmas too, guys.
All right. Take it easy. That was Billy Gomila of SB Nations and the Valley Shook, their LSU side. Good stuff from him. I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting, John, that he talked about how Carson Wentz is not really his comparison of choice. I think Matt Ryan's a positive one. Drew Brees. The one I didn't want to really say, and I'm even hesitating a little bit, but as I've come around a bit more and watched more of Joe Burrow, I don't know, man. I see elements of Peyton Manning. I do. I mean, he's got more.
Wow.
He doesn't have the elite arm. He's got the leadership. He's got the headiness. He's got the ability to move in the pocket. I see it. I don't know. I don't think the ceiling's there, but I see elements of him in his play.
It's such a high end comparison because Peyton was the absolute consummate general. The ball was always going to be in an accurate spot. It was always going to be where it was supposed to be. He had total complete command of the pocket, and obviously that didn't happen overnight. He had a rough few first 4 years in the NFL before he really exploded. But if what the maximum he could be, yeah, sure. I think the comps that are best right now are like Tony Romo and the Matt Ryan spectrum, where they were never the best. They were never the upper echelon, but they're always teetering in the above average area. You could always win because of them, and they're always efficient at their peak. And I think Romo is going to go down as one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the NFL because he didn't have the greatest postseason success. And I think Ryan's overall reputation would be a lot better had they just beaten the Patriots in that Super Bowl. But both of them were extremely accurate passers. They could manipulate the pocket, and they were just above average for pretty much everything. They didn't have really a standout trait. And I think that is going to be what Joe Burrow's, gravestone in terms of a draft prospect is. He's the jack of all trades, but he's above average instead of just good. Not, he's not just good at everything. He's pretty good at everything, but doesn't have that elite trait, which I think a lot of people are still backing off on him about because he doesn't have the elite arm or elite athleticism.
Right. And I guess where I'm going with that, and that's why I was reluctant to say that, because I know when you say that name, you're going, but I see elements of it in that Peyton didn't have the Aaron Rodgers arm. He didn't have, he had a good arm, but what he did is he threw to spots. He knew defenses so well in and out, what teams do. He knew his own offense and what they do, their strengths, their weaknesses. He knew that so well and in and out that he had the high completion percentage. He was able to throw to spots and get, throw guys open, if you will, and basically overcompensate for not having the laser arm. He had a good arm. There's no doubt. He had a very good arm, but it wasn't, the wow arm. It was everything else, the intangibles, the intelligence, the maneuvering in the pocket, those kinds of things is what made, really what made Peyton Manning's career what it was. And I see elements of that in Joe Burrow's game.
It's completely fair. And it's the whole thing about comparisons where it's like people want, something that, compares to their ceiling, what they can hit. It's really just about gauging what they do well, what they don't do well, and putting it into a scope that someone can wrap their head around. And so when people hear Peyton Manning, they're like, oh, well, I don't know about that. So it's more about finding someone where the strengths and weaknesses match. And in a vacuum, that does fit Peyton to an extent.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Billy for joining us. He joins us courtesy of SB Nation and their site. So great to have him on to help us learn a bit more about Joe Burrow, as if we haven't been hearing so much about him. But we're getting the inside look as we have on some of these prospects. We will continue our 2020 prospect watch with others coming down the pipe.